After a long day at the office, I had one last stop to make before heading home. I walked down the hall to the legal department to find my friend, Jessica Reed. "Jess," I said, leaning on her doorframe, "I need you to draw up divorce papers for me. I want them ready by the end of the week." Jessica had been a good friend for years. She was even planning to take me out for a celebratory dinner for my recent promotion. The words hit her hard, and she just stared at me. "For who?" she finally asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "For me," I replied, my voice steady. She looked stunned but didn't push for more details. She knew I hadn't been the same since I came back from France. I was still the same height, but I carried myself differently now, like a person who had been through something terrible and survived. After a moment, she asked carefully, "Do you want to make sure he leaves with nothing? I have a friend who is an expert in these kinds of cases. We can protect your assets and make sure you get full custody of your son." It was 5 days after I returned to the country that my husband, Mark Peterson, finally couldn't handle my coldness anymore. He confronted me in front of our son. "You came back, so that must mean you've forgiven me," Mark said. "If you've forgiven me, why are you still treating me like a stranger?" I calmly took our son back to his room before I came back out to face Mark. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded document, handing it to him. "Sign this," I said. My voice was flat, and my face showed no emotion. Mark stared at the divorce agreement, his eyes wide with shock. Then, his face twisted in anger, and he ripped the document into shreds. "What is this, Sarah?" he yelled. "I told you I'm not getting a divorce. Is it because of Alex Chen? I heard he was in France when you were. Are you with him now? Is that why you got rid of our baby?" Smack. His words were a slap in the face, but mine was a physical one. I had kept my composure until that moment, but now my expression darkened, and I hit him hard across the cheek. "You bastard!" I cried out. "How dare you talk to me about the baby? You have some nerve to even bring that up." The baby had died when I was 3 months pregnant while I was in France. Before I left, I had shown our son Leo how to make video calls. He would call me every night, clutching his tablet. That night had started the same as any other, but when the screen came to life, it was just black. It took almost 10 minutes for Leo's tear-streaked face to appear. "Mommy," he sobbed, wiping his eyes. "When are you coming home? I don't want Daddy anymore. Daddy is bad. He let a bad lady wear your clothes." I told her not to, but she got mad at me. She said Daddy doesn't want you anymore, and she told me to call her Mommy. I was in shock, frozen in place. The camera view shifted, and I saw Mark's assistant waving at me, smiling, wearing my nightgown. "Sarah," she said in a sweet voice, "just enjoy your time in France. I'll take good care of Mr. Peterson and Leo." 3 months. I had only been gone for 3 months, and Mark hadn't even bothered to wait. I felt sick, humiliated, and so stupid for ever thinking we had a chance. I ended the call, but the image of that woman in my clothes burned in my mind. I felt like I couldn't breathe, so I went to take a shower, but my foot slipped on the wet floor, and I fell hard. The baby was gone. At 6 months, the fetus was already formed. I had to go through induced labor, and the pain was so intense I thought I was going to die. If Alex hadn't used his connections to find the best specialist in France, I'm not sure I would have survived. Mark flew to France when he heard what happened, but I refused to see him. My mother chased him away with a broom. That baby had been my last hope for my marriage to Mark. When the baby was gone, so were my feelings for him. As soon as I recovered, I flew home and threw the divorce papers in his face. He refused to sign them. He wouldn't agree no matter what I said. I was ready to take him to court, but then our son, Leo, clung to me, crying and begging. He said if we got divorced, he would rather die. I was shocked by how extreme his reaction was. I asked him who had taught him to say something like that. Leo told me it was his grandparents. Furious, I went to confront Mark's parents. Instead of showing any sympathy, his mother looked at me with contempt. "So he cheated? What's the big deal?" she snapped. "It was just a fling. Men need some fun now and then. He only went to another woman because you weren't doing your job as a wife. This is your fault, not his. You should be ashamed." I stood there, completely stunned. I had always seen my mother-in-law as a sophisticated, educated woman. Her words felt like a slap. I could have cut all ties with Mark's family right then, but I couldn't ignore how fragile my son was. He was too young to understand betrayal, and it was tearing him apart. So, I decided to wait. But things only got worse. No matter how I tried to reassure him, Leo would panic and cry every time I mentioned divorce. I thought about filing the papers secretly, but that snake mark kept Leo with him at all times, making it impossible. I had no choice but to go back to France. I wanted to take Leo with me to get him some professional help, but he refused. In his mind, I was the one trying to break up our family. So the divorce was put on hold. Now that I was back, just looking at Mark made my stomach churn. I couldn't stand being in that house for another minute, but my mother begged me to stay. She said Leo had become quiet and withdrawn, and it was best not to upset him more. For my son's sake, I went back to that miserable house, but my patience was gone. "Mark," I said, my voice calm, "we were married for a long time. Let's not make this any messier than it has to be. Sign the divorce papers. You can have this house, and I'll take the one in the suburbs. We'll each take a car, and we'll split the savings down the middle." I glanced at the torn pieces of the agreement on the floor without any emotion. I pulled another copy from my bag and set it on the table. I had printed several, expecting he might do something like this. "I'll have custody of our son," I said. "If you don't agree, we can let the court decide, and Mark, I have proof of your affair. If this goes to court, you will leave with nothing. Let's end this with some dignity and part ways without causing any more pain." After we officially filed for divorce, I didn't have the time or energy to deal with my son's feelings. I just dropped him off at my parents' house. Mark's parents had gone back to their hometown and wouldn't be back for 2 weeks, which saved me from some immediate drama. I had just been promoted and was swamped with work. I desperately needed an assistant. When the HR department sent me a list of candidates, I spent a long time looking at one resume. It was Chloe, the same Chloe who had been Mark's assistant. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I looked closely at the photo, and once I was sure, I tossed the resume on my desk. "She'll do," I said flatly. During lunch, the new HR manager came to see me. She explained that Chloe had been with the company for a year and had just taken 10 days off for a personal matter. She was due back the next day. The HR manager used to work for me and was still loyal. She warned me that Chloe couldn't be trusted, that she was a schemer and shouldn't be given any real responsibility. Chloe's name wasn't supposed to be on the list. The manager thought a subordinate added her by mistake. She had actually picked out a few top performers for me to choose from. In the end, I chose 2 people, one who was genuinely skilled, and Chloe, whose resume was clearly not up to par. On Chloe's first day back, I publicly slammed a stack of papers on her desk. "You idiot!" I snapped. "I asked for a proposal, not a research paper. Did you just copy and paste this from the internet?" On her second day, I accidentally spilled hot coffee on her. "Are you trying to kill me with boiling coffee, you clumsy fool? How did you even get this job?" On the third day, I sent her on a 50-kilometer trip to get supplies from a factory, then sent her another 20 kilometers to buy desserts for the team. On the fourth day, I made her work overtime to tape together 10 shredded documents from the trash, only to tell her to shred them again the next morning. On the 5th day, I told Chloe her proposal was finally good enough and had her present it at the morning meeting. Then, in front of everyone, I tore her apart. "You look like a decoration, not a professional. This proposal is a complete disaster." On the 6th day, Chloe came to my office with tears staining her face, holding a resignation letter. I called the HR manager and told her to send Chloe's contract to our company's legal advisor, Jessica. I told Jessica to give the contract to Chloe personally and remind her that quitting before her contract was up would mean paying a huge penalty. On the 7th day, Chloe finally broke. She stormed into my office, her voice trembling with anger. "You're doing this on purpose?" she cried. "This is personal revenge. If I had known you worked here, I never would have taken this job. You're cruel and petty." I crossed my legs, lifted my coffee cup, and took a slow sip. I looked at Chloe like she was a clown at the circus. "Of course this is revenge," I said calmly. "If you can't handle it, you're free to resign. Or, even better, go talk to the general manager. Aren't you good at charming men? Once you get into his bed and take my job, then you'll have the right to question me." Chloe's body shook with rage, her face bright red. But then, she suddenly laughed, her expression turning smug. "You think you're so powerful, Sarah, but you're just a wife he threw away. Do you know what Mark used to say about you when we were in bed together? He said you were boring, a nagging old hag. The man you loved, he loved me. I cut her off with a calm smile and reached into my drawer, pulling out a silver pen and rolling it between my fingers. Is that right? I said softly. Well, if Mark really loves you, that's great. All you have to do is get him to sign the divorce papers. Once he does, I'll leave you alone. And on your wedding day, I'll even send you a nice gift. Chloe's face went pale. He won't divorce you because of the kid, she hissed. If you didn't have a child together, he would have left you a long time ago. He only fired me because you made him. While you were in France, he bought me a house. We've been together for the last 2 years. You had no idea, did you? My face stayed calm, without a single flicker of emotion. The only change was the faint, ironic smile on my lips. Let me remind you of something, I said slowly. As long as I refuse to step aside, you will always be the other woman. Actually, no, that's giving you too much credit. At best, you're just a mistress. Chloe's face turned white with rage. The angrier she got, the wider my smile grew. You've been with him for 2 years and you still haven't had a child? Is there something wrong with you? I asked sweetly. You should really take better care of yourself. In fact, since the janitor is out today, why don't you go clean all the restrooms on this floor? I'll have the office manager check your work. I had been making Chloe's life a nightmare from the start. Jessica, the lawyer, had even added some tricky wording to Chloe's contract, just enough to scare her out of quitting. So instead of leaving, she started spreading rumors about me. But I had been with the company for years. I was part of the old guard, someone the higher-ups trusted. More importantly, I was officially the deputy general manager. No one was going to cross me. As time went on, it was obvious to everyone that I was targeting Chloe. People started whispering, trying to figure out why. Even the general manager called me into his office. I didn't hide anything. I calmly told him everything. I said Chloe had an affair with my husband and that I was getting a divorce. I admitted that how I treated her was deliberate, part revenge, part strategy. I wanted to provoke Mark. If he came to me to defend Chloe, it would make it easier for me to finalize the divorce. When Mark did come to see me, I played a recording of Chloe's voice for him. Then I looked at him and said, if you refuse to sign the divorce papers, I will post this online. Maybe you can handle the public shame, but do you really want to lose your reputation like that? Mark always cared about his image. Furious, he lashed out at Chloe, then turned to me and tried to explain everything, insisting that he had been manipulated and that Chloe had set him up. I didn't care about his excuses. I warned him that if he still refused to sign, I would bring in the lawyers, and if he tried to use our son against me, it would be all-out war. Somehow, the story got out at work. People found out that Chloe had broken up my marriage. The attitude toward her changed overnight. Everyone started criticizing her, either to her face or behind her back. The employees who had once tried to get on my good side now felt like they had permission to bully Chloe. Even male colleagues who used to be friendly started avoiding her, afraid of getting caught in the drama. In just a month, Chloe was completely isolated. She called in sick, but HR marked her as absent without leave, and her pay was cut. When she tried to talk to the general manager, he refused to see her and had security show her out. In the cafeteria, people moved away from her as if she had a contagious disease. The lunch lady dumped leftovers on her tray. When she went to the lounge for coffee, another woman blocked her way and handed her a bottle of green tea with a sarcastic smile. Chloe finally snapped. One afternoon, as I was walking to my car in the underground garage, she drove straight at me in a rage. I managed to jump out of the way just in time, but the car still hit my side. When I opened my eyes in the hospital, the first person I saw was Alex. He leaned over me, gently checking my eyes before putting a warm hand on my forehead. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly. "Are you in any pain?" I stared at him, my mind still foggy. It took a few seconds for me to realize what was happening. "Why are you here?" I finally asked. Alex chuckled and gently stroked my hair. "Because I work here. I'm your orthopedic doctor." "Can I get a different doctor?" I said. "This feels awkward." 2 years ago, after a trip, we had gone our separate ways. Alex had called a few times, just polite check-ins. On the day I fell, it was Alex who had called again. My mother-in-law answered the phone and told him what happened. Without a second thought, Alex rushed to the hospital. That was the first time we had seen each other since we said goodbye at the airport. When I was released from the hospital in France, Alex came to pick me up. He asked me to give him a chance, said he wanted to take care of me. I understood how he felt, but I turned him down. He never brought it up again after that day. We hadn't seen each other since, and now our first meeting back in the country was like this. I felt embarrassed and wanted a different doctor. Alex could see that and smiled gently. "I'm the best orthopedic doctor here," he said with a light laugh. "If you ask for someone else, you'll regret it." Then he became quiet, sighing softly as he pulled the blanket over my shoulders. His eyes were calm but held a deep, complicated emotion. "Sarah," he said gently, "you don't need to feel pressured. Just think of me as your doctor. And don't worry, even though I haven't given up on you. I won't try to pursue you again until your divorce is final," he continued with quiet resolve. "I thought about letting you go, I really did, but life keeps showing me that we're connected. If you were happily married, I would have never interfered. But if you do get divorced, no matter how many times you turn me down, I'll keep trying, even if it takes a lifetime." I ended up staying in the hospital for a week. Alex came by so often, countless times a day, that the whole hospital started whispering about us. People began saying that the woman in room 8 was Dr. Chen's girlfriend. I had no idea about the rumors. I just noticed that the nurses seemed to change all the time. It wasn't until Mark came to visit that I found out about the gossip. "Sarah, I knew it!" he burst out in anger. "You're insisting on a divorce because of that man, Alex. Have you two been involved this whole time?" He had gone to my office looking for me, only to be mocked by some of my coworkers. Before he could figure out what was going on, someone mentioned that I had been hit by a car. Alarmed, he rushed to the hospital. As soon as he asked about me at the front desk, a passing nurse said, "Are you looking for Dr. Chen's girlfriend? She's in room 8 on the 5th floor." Mark froze. "Who is Dr. Chen?" he asked. When the nurse told him it was Alex, Mark's chest tightened with rage. Without another word, he stormed into my room and exploded. "Sarah," he shouted, "you're with him, aren't you? How far have things gone? Did you sleep with him? Tell me. You're mine, Sarah. You belong to me." I stayed silent as he yelled. After he was done, I looked at him like he had lost his mind. "You're sick," I said coldly. Mark lunged at me, grabbing my chin and trying to roughly wipe my lips, his eyes red with fury. "I can see it on your face. You're with him, right? Say it!" I struggled to push him away, but he was too strong. My lips were throbbing with pain, and just when I felt like I couldn't breathe, Alex burst into the room. "You're hurting her. Can't you see she's weak?" Alex said sternly. He stepped between us, pushed Mark away, and came to my side. He saw the redness and swelling on my lips and reached out to gently touch my face, but before he could, Mark violently pulled his hand away. "Get your hands off my wife!" Mark roared. "Who do you think you are, touching her like that?" He raised his fist to strike, but Alex was faster and caught his wrist, holding it tight. Alex turned to me and said gently, "Get some rest." Then he dragged Mark out of the room. Before he left, he asked a nurse to come and change my dressing. I couldn't hear what the two men said after that, but later that evening, when Alex came back, there was a fresh bruise on his cheek. I figured they must have fought. "Does it hurt?" I asked softly. Alex smiled. "No, it doesn't." I looked away. What happened today was Mark's fault. I apologize on his behalf. Alex studied my face for a moment. "Are you sure you want a divorce? Is there really no hope left for you and him?" I nodded without hesitating. Alex's eyes lit up with a faint smile. "Then there's no need to apologize for him. If you're no longer husband and wife, he has nothing to do with you." I said nothing. Alex continued, "Sarah, I have a way to help you get divorced." I stayed in the hospital for 2 more weeks. Once I was discharged, the first thing I did was have Chloe Young arrested. I had the company's security team pull the surveillance footage from the parking lot and gave it to the police. Then I called Jessica. "I want to press charges," I told her calmly. "I want Chloe behind bars." Jessica slapped her chest confidently. "Leave it to me. I'll make sure she stays in there for a long time." With Chloe's case underway, I thought about Alex's plan. Before I did anything, I decided to give Mark one last chance. I met with him for a serious talk. Deep down, I still hoped I wouldn't have to use Alex's method, but Mark was as stubborn as ever. He flatly refused to agree to a divorce. "You're being too cruel to me," he said, his voice full of accusation. "Chloe drugged me. She set me up. I wasn't in control. Why can't you forgive me?" A man makes one mistake, and you treat it like a death sentence. He leaned forward, his voice rising. Besides, it wasn't even a real affair. I was the victim. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled out a photograph and threw it in his face. It was a picture of Chloe standing in front of a house. Mark froze. Yes, he admitted, panic in his voice. I bought the house, but I had no choice. She had a video of us and threatened to send it to you. I was scared. I just wanted to buy her silence. I pulled out another photo and tossed it at him. This one showed Chloe wearing one of my nightgowns, taken 2 years ago. Mark gritted his teeth. I didn't even know she was in the house that night. I was at a dinner party. I had no idea Chloe had gone to our home, let alone that she would wear your clothes. I only found out later when our son mentioned it. I looked him in the eye. How did she get a key to our house? Mark hesitated, then mumbled, I once asked her to take our son home. I gave her the key just that one time. She must have made a copy without me knowing. I said nothing. My eyes were cold and distant, and Mark could see that no matter what excuses he made, there was no going back. I looked straight at him and asked, How many times have you been to Chloe's place? Mark rubbed the back of his neck, hesitated, and finally muttered, I didn't go there willingly. Chloe threatened me with a video. I only went there to try to delete it. He buried his face in his hands, groaning. I couldn't let you see that video, Sarah. I couldn't afford a divorce. So, every time she threatened me, I gave in. I had no choice. His voice trembled. She made countless copies. Every time I deleted one, another would appear on my phone. She said if I didn't do what she wanted, she would send it to you. To protect our marriage, he said, I had to compromise. I never expected Chloe to be so relentless. If you hadn't sent her to prison, Sarah, I swear I might have killed her myself. To me, his whole story sounded like a pathetic joke. He still refused to sign the divorce papers. With a cold stare, I slapped him hard across the face, then kicked him in the shin before turning and walking away. Just before I left, I threw one last comment over my shoulder. A fly only lands on a cracked egg, and a dog never stops digging through trash. The very next day, Mark received a formal letter from my lawyer. Still, he refused to divorce me. At the court hearing, our son, Leo, burst into tears, wailing and clinging to me, begging me not to leave his father. My heart ached, and in that moment I couldn't go through with it. I asked for a pause in the proceedings. Afterward, I turned to my mother. Who brought Leo to court today? I asked you to stay home with him. My mother replied, Mr. and Mrs. Peterson came to pick him up an hour before I was supposed to. That evening, I locked myself in my room and stayed there all day. At 8:00, I sent a message to Alex. Then I sent one to Mark. By 10:00, Mark arrived at the hotel, following the address I had texted him. The room was on the 3rd floor. In my message, I had said I wanted to have a calm conversation about the divorce. I didn't want to go back to that house, so I suggested we meet at a hotel. At the front desk, Mark was told a room key had been left for him. Hopeful and relieved, he took the key and went to the room. He thought I had changed my mind, but the moment he opened the door, he froze. His blood ran cold. Scattered across the floor were men's and women's clothes. On the bed, 2 naked bodies were tangled together. Even more shocking were their faces, knew both of them. I opened my eyes lazily and glanced at Mark without any panic. Then I shifted under the blanket and snuggled closer to Alex's chest. In a soft, sleepy voice, I said, Why are you here? I thought I told you not to come. I reached over and tapped Alex's cheek. Give me your phone, please. Alex smiled, tilted my chin up, kissed me on the lips, then picked his phone off the nightstand and handed it to me. The two of us continued our little act as if no one else was in the room. Mark stood there, his face pale with fury, barely holding himself together. I leaned comfortably against Alex's shoulder, and he gently wrapped his arm around me. Oh no, I said suddenly, looking at the screen. The message didn't send. I turned to Alex and pouted playfully. This is your fault, I said. I told you to take it slow, but no, you had to rush everything. Now look what happened. The message telling him not to come never got sent. How awkward. Then I turned to Mark and smiled sweetly. Well, you caught us. What are you standing there for? You should be taking pictures. After Mark stormed out, Alex threw back the blanket. Both of us were still fully clothed from the waist down. My upper body was wrapped in a tube top. Alex picked up my jacket from the floor and helped me put it on. Then he put on his own shirt. He sat beside me and asked, Do you regret it? I shook my head. No, Not if it gets him to finally sign the papers. I don't regret anything. I fell silent, staring blankly ahead. Alex watched me for a while, then in a sudden move, he leaned over and gently pinned me beneath him. "Sarah," he said softly, "let's stop pretending. Let's make this real." My eyes widened in shock. I scrambled out from under him and ran. Alex sat back, watching me go, a faint smile on his lips. He had expected that. He never intended to take advantage of me, he just wanted to tease me. 2 weeks later, Mark finally signed the papers. He said he couldn't get over what he saw at the hotel. I found his words ridiculous. If that was all it took, I should have followed Alex's advice from the beginning. Once the divorce was final, I blocked Mark's number, deleted him from all my contacts, removed him from social media, and erased every trace of him from my life. I sold our suburban house and bought a small apartment closer to my office. I moved in with my son, Leo. Although I had full custody, I never stopped Mark's parents from seeing their grandson. The elderly couple came to me in tears, begging me to reconsider, but I ignored them. Later, it seemed they had learned from Mark about my relationship with Alex. They stormed into my apartment, accusing me of being unfaithful during the marriage and ruining their son's name. I tried to explain, but their shouting only got worse. Finally, I had security escort them out and told them not to come back. Mark's mother caused a scene in the courtyard, yelling and crying. Eventually, my own mother came to confront her. Neither woman backed down, and they ended up grabbing each other's hair and getting into a full-on fight. In the end, my mother won, and Mark had to pull his mother away. After that, the Petersons never showed up again. The peaceful life we once had was completely gone. Everyone had shown their true colors. I could only sigh and accept that this was my new reality. After the divorce, I threw myself into my work and taking care of my son, but Leo wasn't doing well. He became even more withdrawn, sensitive, and barely spoke. Some days, I would come home from a long, stressful day at work to find him quiet and unresponsive. My frustration would build until I snapped and raised my voice. Leo would burst into tears, and then I would have to force myself to calm down, hold him, and soothe him. Toward the end of the year, things got worse. Work was overwhelming, and Leo started refusing to go to school. On top of that, my father had an accident while out for a walk and had to be hospitalized. My mother had to stay at the hospital to look after him. I was stretched thin, barely keeping it all together. With my hands full at the office and Leo refusing to cooperate, I could only ask my mother to take him to the hospital with her during the day. In the evenings, I would go pick him up. One weekend, my company had a dinner, but I was too tired to go. I went straight home and collapsed on the bed. In my sleep, I sensed someone entering the room. Startled, I sat up, thinking it was a burglar. But in the living room, I saw Leo standing there. My heart sank. I had forgotten to pick him up from the hospital. I rushed over, scooped him into my arms, and asked, "How did you get home, sweetheart?" Leo pointed toward the kitchen and said softly, "Uncle Chen brought me back." I turned around, stunned. Alex was standing there, holding a bowl. When he saw me, he offered a gentle smile. "Leo was getting restless at the hospital," he said kindly. "So I brought him home. You haven't eaten yet, have you? Go wash up, dinner is ready." I stood frozen for a moment, watching Alex's tall frame move gracefully around the room. How long had it been since someone cooked for me? I could hardly remember. Probably back in our first year of marriage, when Mark used to have warm meals waiting for me. That was 7 or 8 years ago. I had almost forgotten that Mark even knew how to cook. On the table were all the dishes Leo and I loved. I looked at Alex with surprise. He explained with a smile that he had asked my mother about my favorite foods before leaving the hospital. He told me to focus on work and not worry about my parents. He had already arranged for nurses to look after my father and had spoken with the doctors. I was deeply touched and thanked him. Alex just reached out, patted my head lightly, and said I should get some rest. I looked at him quietly, my heart full. I knew that since the divorce, Leo had been wary of any man who got close to me. He had been so against the separation, largely because Mark's parents had planted the idea in his head that I would remarry and abandon him. Strangely, though, Leo seemed to accept Alex without any issue. During dinner, he even put food on Alex's plate and later turned to me and said, "I want to go back to school tomorrow. Can Uncle Chen take me?" I felt relieved, but also confused. I jokingly asked Alex if he had cast some kind of spell on my son. Alex chuckled. "It's a secret between men," he said with a twinkle in his eye. "You just need to take care of your work, eat well, and rest. Leave the rest to me." At the end of the evening, I asked him how he had gotten into the apartment. He said my mother had given him the spare key. I didn't say anything more. After dinner, I walked him to the door, but instead of leaving the building, Alex walked directly to the apartment across the hall. He turned back and smiled warmly. "Sarah," he said, "I live right here. If you need anything, just knock, or you can come in any time. The code is your birthday." I stood there in silence, watching him walk away, my eyes following his steady steps. Leo had become Alex's little shadow. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't figure out the secret connection between them. I asked Alex, but he just smiled and said, "It's a man's secret." I asked my son, and he gave me the same answer. No matter who I asked, neither of them would tell me the truth. I had always tried to keep a polite distance from Alex, but it was becoming impossible. Leo found every excuse to run over to Alex's apartment. When I finished cleaning and couldn't find Leo, he was at Alex's. When I came out of my study and my son was gone, he was at Alex's. Even when I called home and no one answered, I would go next door and knock, and sure enough, Leo would be there. What really confused me was how Leo had started to see Alex as some kind of hero. He idolized him, relied on him, and adored him way too much. Sometimes, I felt like I wasn't Leo's real mother. Alex seemed more like his father. For example, when a pipe burst in our house, I had just found a plumber's number when Leo ran out the door and knocked on Alex's. He grabbed Alex's hand, looked back at me with a cheerful smile and said, "Uncle Chen can fix anything." Or when I came home from work, ready to help Leo with his homework, he would already be heading to Alex's house with his backpack. On his way out, he would grab the fruit I bought and say, "Uncle Chen teaches better, the fruit is for him." Or when I planned to take Leo to the amusement park, he would call Alex in excitement. But when I sternly said that Alex couldn't come, Leo burst into tears, ran into his room, and shouted, "If Uncle Chen isn't going, then I'm not going either." Or when I was exhausted and fell asleep on the couch after work, I would wake up to find dinner already made. Alex would be sitting nearby, playing with Leo, the two of them waiting for me at the table. Leo would hold my hand with one hand and Alex's with the other, smiling up at me and saying, "Uncle Chen made your favorite, 8 treasure rice." Or when I got sick, Leo's first instinct was never to call my mother or a doctor. It was always Alex. In my feverish days, I would always open my eyes to see Alex by my side. He would stay all night, taking care of me, not leaving until my fever broke. And before he left, he would gently tell me, "There's warm millet porridge on the stove. Eat it when you wake up." Or when there was a parent-child day at school, Leo finished breakfast early and immediately went to knock on Alex's door. I tried to stop him, reminding him not to bother others. Leo's eyes turned red with frustration, and he looked crushed. "If Uncle Chen doesn't go," he said, "then Mommy, you shouldn't go either." That was the day I lost my temper. Furious, I raised my hand and hit him. Leo cried, heartbroken, and though I instantly regretted it and tried to hug him, he pushed me away. "Other kids have both a mom and a dad," he shouted. "I don't have a dad anymore. I only have Uncle Chen. If you go alone, I'll be laughed at." After that fight, Leo packed his things and moved into Alex's home. I felt helpless, trapped. I didn't want to upset my son further, so I quietly asked Alex to look after him for a while. I threw myself into work, just to stay busy. But every night, I came home to an empty house, drowning my loneliness in alcohol. One evening, Alex let himself in. I hadn't turned on the lights. I was curled up on the couch, lost in silence. Alex didn't say anything at first. He quietly picked up the empty bottles scattered on the floor, then sat beside me and gently touched my hair. His voice was soft as he said, "Sarah, do you know why I brought Leo home from the hospital that day?" I shook my head and took another drink from my bottle. Alex took it from my hands, and I tried to grab it back. "Sarah?" he said gently, "I'm only going to say this once. If you keep drowning yourself like this, then whatever is between you and Leo, you'll have to figure it out on your own." I stopped struggling. Alex picked up a blanket, covered me with it, and guided my head to rest on his shoulder. "Your divorce from Mark was a huge blow to Leo," he said. "Children are more sensitive than we think. They understand far more than they let on." That day, after I finished my rounds at the hospital, I was walking back to my office when I saw Leo sitting alone on the rooftop. Alex's voice dropped lower. Sarah, that day, Leo was ready to jump. I sat frozen, my face pale as a sheet. My body trembled uncontrollably, my pupils shrinking with shock. Tears streamed down my cheeks without stopping, my spirit on the verge of collapse. Alex gently pulled me into his arms, one hand resting softly on the back of my head, soothing me like a father would a frightened child. In a low, careful voice, as if afraid his words might shatter me, Alex said, Leo told me that while you and Mark were busy with the divorce, his grandparents kept pressuring him to choose between his parents. They grabbed his arm so tightly it left marks, but no one even noticed. His other grandmother was too busy taking care of his grandfather. His father was off with another woman, and his mother, well, she was too busy to see him at all. He said it felt like no one in the world loved him anymore. Alex paused, giving me time to breathe. Then he gently continued. Leo said Chloe came to his school. She stood there in front of his teachers and classmates, claiming to be his new mother. The other kids laughed at him. They teased him, saying his parents were divorced and no one wanted him. That was why he didn't want to go to school anymore. Alex's voice grew even softer. He said his grandparents told him that if you married again, you would have new children and send him away to an orphanage. Then, when you asked him to go with your mother to the hospital, he thought you were abandoning him. While he was there, he overheard someone arguing. One voice said that jumping off a building would make all your problems disappear. That's why he went up to the roof. I broke down in Alex's arms, sobbing until I could barely breathe. He said nothing more, only held me close and let me cry, his hand gently stroking my hair, offering silent comfort. Once my tears began to slow and my breathing steadied, I looked up and asked if Alex had said something to our son. Why was Leo so attached to him all of a sudden? Alex nodded. He had spoken with Leo, but he told me gently, that's not what matters most. What matters is how Leo feels. When he's ready to talk to you, when he tells you himself, then you'll know you've been forgiven. He assured me Leo would return home in a day or two. You don't need to worry too much, Alex said softly. No matter how angry a child gets, no matter how much he acts out, the person he loves most will always be his mother. Exhausted from crying and the weight of my emotions, I eventually fell asleep in Alex's arms after quietly telling him everything that had been bottled up inside me. Alex carried me gently to my bedroom, tucked me in, and placed a tender kiss on my forehead. 10 minutes later, he returned, carrying Leo in his arms. The little boy climbed onto the bed, lying quietly near the pillow, his eyes swollen from crying. Alex wiped away his tears and placed his small hand into mine. Alex spoke in a warm, steady voice. Leo, remember this. There is no one in this world who loves you more than your mother. You're a strong young man now, and strong boys protect their moms. If something hurts you, you must talk to her about it. She only has you now. If even you stop caring for her, it would break her heart. Leo nodded solemnly, his red eyes still glistening with tears. He rubbed at his face, then looked up at Alex, blinking with purpose, as if making an important decision. Uncle Chen, he asked softly, do you love my mommy? I do, Alex replied without hesitation. Leo's eyes lit up instantly. He grabbed Alex's hand, his little fingers curling around it with hope. Then, will you marry her? He asked brightly. Can you be my daddy? Alex smiled as he ruffled Leo's hair. Uncle Chen would be honored. But Leo, your mommy doesn't love Uncle Chen. I can't force her, no matter how much I want to. In the darkness, beneath the blanket, my eyelashes quivered. My fingers curled ever so slightly around Leo's hand. After my father was discharged from the hospital, my mother made a practical decision to help care for me and my son. She moved both herself and my husband into my apartment. It was a great relief for me, but soon something strange began to happen. First, it had been Leo who followed Alex everywhere like a shadow. Now it was my parents. Ever since they moved in, my parents couldn't stop singing Alex's praises. He was always on their lips, and they spoke of him as though he were their own son. My mother cooked every day and insisted that Leo go across the hall to invite Alex to join them for dinner. He lives alone, it can't be easy, she would say with sympathy. At the table, she treated him with the warmth usually reserved for a son. After meals, Alex would sit and play chess with my father, who often laughed so hard it brought tears to his eyes. I could no longer control how things were unfolding. That evening, my mother gently pulled me into the bedroom and, without delay, launched into a list of all the wonderful things about Dr. Alex Chen. She went on and on, praising his character, his dedication, his gentle nature, and then, with a hopeful look, began dropping hints. "Sarah," she said, her voice warm but serious, "be honest with me. What are you really thinking? Dr. Chen has made his feelings clear. He truly cares about you. But what about you? Do you like him?" That one simple question caught me off guard. Did I like Alex? I wasn't sure. I didn't know for certain if what I felt was love, but I couldn't deny that for many months now, my heart had been quietly stirred. When I had been sick, it was Alex who had appeared first. In my weakest moments, when I most needed comfort and care, when my heart was at its most fragile, it was Alex who had stayed by my side. Had he come to me with grand gestures or bold declarations of love, I might have turned away. I might have assumed he had ulterior motives, might have dismissed him entirely. But Alex had done the opposite. He treated me with the deepest respect. His presence was calm, steady, and filled with a kind of quiet affection I couldn't ignore. In all these years, aside from Mark during their early courtship and the honeymoon phase of our marriage, only Alex had made my heart skip a beat. What he gave me was not dazzling passion or poetic promises, but something far rarer, a profound sense of security. His shoulders were the kind I could imagine leaning on. And yet, I couldn't give him an answer. I felt uncertain. I didn't know how long my feelings would last. I was afraid that this might just be a fleeting moment of gratitude, not true affection. I was afraid that even if we got together, things might change again. I had already been through too much. I was tired, and I couldn't afford another emotional storm. Seeing the hesitation in my eyes, my mother let out a sigh and gently patted my shoulder. "My dear," she said softly, "life is long, but a man like Dr. Chen only comes once in a lifetime. Mark left you with a desert in your heart, but Alex, he is the one planting an oasis in that desert. He understands your silences, stays beside you quietly, and gives you warmth when no one else does. If you let him go, you may never meet someone again who knows how to love you slowly and truly." Every single day. After my mother left, Leo tiptoed into the room. He climbed into bed beside me and snuggled into my arms, his voice soft, sweet, and full of innocent hope. "Mommy," he said, "Uncle Chen said he really likes you. Will you marry him? That way I can have a daddy again, and someone to love you too." I looked down at my son and asked the same question I had asked before. "Leo, why do you like Alex so much? What did he say to you that day on the hospital rooftop? Why did you agree to come back with him?" Leo looked up at me, his eyes bright and serious. "Mommy, I know I was wrong. I won't make you worry again," he said first, his voice full of guilt. Then he began eagerly and sincerely to tell me all the reasons why he liked Alex. "Mommy, I love Uncle Chen because I love you the most," he said earnestly. "Daddy brought that bad lady home and made you cry. I didn't like Daddy. Grandpa and Grandma say mean things about you. I don't like them either. Only Uncle Chen never said anything bad about you." He told her that Alex said he was a real little man, that Alex taught him important lessons, that Alex took him to the amusement park, showed him dinosaurs, played games with him, helped with homework, and taught him how to love his mother. He said Alex always seemed to know exactly what he was feeling, that Alex went to school to talk to kids who were being mean to him, that Alex made him feel proud and liked at school. He said Alex noticed when his pencil broke, when he fell and scraped his knee, when his clothes were dirty, or when he was feeling down. He would always comfort him, cheer him up, stay by his side, and give him a warm hug whenever he was sad. He said, "Mommy, a dad should be like Uncle Chen. If I could be his son, I would be so happy." I listened to every word, my heart swelling with emotion. Tears rolled down my cheeks. In that moment, I realized how unqualified Mark and I had been as parents. Mark always left the boy with his mother, barely present, and I, though I always believed I loved Leo deeply, had often let work and daily stress take over, forgetting that what my son needed most was time, attention, and love. I thought of Alex again, of his kind, steady eyes, so deep and full of warmth. My heart softened, and for the first time in a long while, a quiet sense of peace settled over me. It was the 9th day of September, Leo's birthday. Feeling a deep sense of guilt toward my son, I had arranged for a half-month break from work. I wanted to take him on a special trip, just the two of them. Disneyland was at the top of his wish list, and he had never stopped talking about the endless grasslands of the northern plains. On the morning of his birthday, I started preparing early. I picked up a cake from the bakery and carried it home, my mood light and full of anticipation. But as I approached my building, all my joy vanished in an instant. Standing by the entrance in a crumpled light blue shirt was a figure I recognized immediately. It was Mark. Before I could turn away and leave, Mark rushed up and grabbed my arm. With one forceful pull, he drew me into his arms. "Sarah, I'm sorry. Please come back to me," Mark said desperately. "I can't breathe without you. I can't live without you. I miss you so much. Everything I did, everything was for you. I can forgive you for being with Alex. I really can. Let's just forgive each other. Start over. I still love you, Sarah." "I always have." His voice cracked as he reached for me again, trying to embrace me once more. I quickly stepped back, frowning in alarm. I gave him a hard kick and pushed him away. It had been more than a year since I had last seen him, but the man before me now was no longer the confident and arrogant Mark I once knew. His face looked worn, his beard unkempt, his eyes dull and lifeless. That once sharp suit he used to wear with pride had been replaced by a wrinkled shirt reeking of cigarette smoke. I stared at him, and surprisingly, I felt nothing. No pain, no anger, no warmth. Only a faint trace of pity and a quiet sorrow for what had once been. Time, I realized, had washed away even our most beautiful memories. There was no going back. "Mom!" The sudden sound of my son's voice startled me. I turned around and was met by Alex's deep, unreadable gaze. For a brief second, my heart fluttered in panic. I rushed forward, still holding the birthday cake, and tried to explain. "I didn't invite him here," I said quickly. "I have nothing to do with him anymore. I pushed him away. I didn't hug him, really, I didn't. Please don't misunderstand. I wasn't even sure what I was saying. I only knew I needed Alex to know the truth." Alex said nothing. He simply handed our son to me, gently brushed my hair back, and said softly, "Take him upstairs." That night, when Alex came home, there was a fresh bruise on his face. I went to get some ointment. As I gently dabbed at his injury, Alex asked with a quiet smile, "Does this mean you feel sorry for me?" I hesitated, not knowing how to answer. Alex took a step back and slowly opened his arms. His eyes, shadowed by the soft lamplight, were hard to read. "Sarah," he said gently, "I may not be able to wait any longer. If you're ready to accept me, come into my arms now." Something inside me almost responded immediately. That embrace it was too tempting, too warm, too safe. I wanted to throw myself into it, to give up everything and surrender. But my rational mind held me back. I hesitated, torn between the pull of my heart and the fear of uncertainty. Alex's expression dimmed. Slowly, he lowered his arms and, as always, gently touched the top of my head. "Sarah," he said softly, "you still owe me one hug." That night, I lay awake, tossing and turning. I couldn't forget the look in Alex's eyes, the way his hands had dropped in disappointment, the quiet sadness in his voice. Early the next morning, I loaded the packed suitcases into the car. It was time to begin the trip I had promised my son, a journey of 2 weeks, just the two of them. I needed the time to think. When I returned, I would have an answer. But just as I was about to start the engine, my son came running toward me in a panic, his eyes red from crying. "Mom, Uncle Chen is leaving. He's going far, far away. I just called him, he's still at the hospital. Let's go find him, please." I froze in place, my whole body went cold. I may not be able to wait any longer. Now I understood what he had meant. That was his goodbye. He really was leaving. I jumped into the car and sped all the way to the hospital, but I was too late. "Dr. Chen left this morning," the head nurse said with a sigh. "He used to be with Doctors Without Borders. He came back 3 years ago because he met someone who made him want to settle down. No one knows why, but he decided to return to that life. We only found out this morning. There wasn't even time to say goodbye." I stood there in shock, my mind a blur. Without thinking, I turned around, got back in the car, and headed straight to the airport. Alex's phone kept ringing, but no one answered. Panicked, I rushed up the stairs, from the first floor to the second, then from the second to the third, calling his name as I searched every hallway. My voice echoed through the building, growing more desperate with each passing second. By the time I reached the 3rd floor, I was out of breath, my heart pounding wildly. Still, there was no sign of him. Desperation took over. My legs gave out beneath me, and I collapsed onto the floor, covering my face with my hands. I began to sob. I wanted to run downstairs and use the loudspeaker to call for him, but my body wouldn't move. Then, from behind me, a familiar voice called my name. Startled, I turned around quickly, and there he was. Alex! Tears burst from my eyes again, but this time they were mixed with joy. I laughed and cried as I scrambled to my feet. We stood about 10 feet apart. Alex looked at me gently and asked, "Why did you come after me?" I sniffled and replied, "I came to return the hug I owe you." Alex chuckled and dropped his suitcase. He opened his arms wide again and said with a smile, "Sarah, if you're sure, then come to me. But no changing your mind this time." I didn't hesitate. Ignoring the stares around them, I ran straight into his embrace, throwing my arms around him. I held him tightly and cried while pounding lightly on his back. "You idiot," I said through my tears. "You scared me to death. I thought you really left." Alex wrapped his arms around me and rested his head on my shoulder. His eyes were warm, shining with emotion. Over my shoulder, he saw Leo in the distance, grinning proudly and flashing him a victory sign with his fingers. Alex chuckled fondly at the boy's mischievous triumph. He whispered into my ear, "I told you, you owed me a hug. I've waited too long for this. There's no way I would give up that easily." I lifted my head from his chest, my eyes still moist, filled with gratitude and peace. A smile bloomed across my face, and my cheeks turned a gentle shade of pink. I wrapped my arms around his neck and said softly, "Buy one, get one free. No returns allowed." Alex grinned. "That's exactly what I was hoping for." "So," I teased, "after waiting this long, one hug isn't really enough, is it?" Trying to suppress his laughter, Alex glanced at Leo and gave him a playful wink. The little boy got the message and immediately covered his eyes with his hands. Alex leaned down and kissed me, tender and slow, filled with affection and warmth. Later, when Alex handed me a plane ticket, I was stunned. That was when I realized everything had been planned. He and Leo had been working together all along, keeping the secret from me. He had quietly asked our son to check my phone for flight information, found the flight number, and booked a seat on the same one. "My love," Alex said with a grin. "Look at this. I even got the seat on your right. I told you we were meant to be." I blushed and playfully swatted his arm. "Who's your love? Don't call me that." I held Leo's hand, the little boy bouncing with excitement, while Alex firmly held on to my other hand. With his free hand, he pushed the suitcase along and leaned in to whisper, "Leo said he wants a little sister." Later, I asked him quietly, "Why were you so sure that I was the one?" Alex only smiled and said nothing. 3 years ago at a school reunion, he heard I would be attending. That was the reason he came back from abroad. If I had been happily married, perhaps he would have stayed a lifelong volunteer doctor, traveling the world without roots or attachments. He was an orphan. He had no home, no family. Only one memory remained steady in his heart, a soft glow like moonlight. He had fallen for me in high school, at first sight, and ever since, I had never left his thoughts. He could never quite explain why. He only knew that I was the one who felt right. And now, finally, his waiting had paid off.